I didn't realize the connection between the lost childhood and being a one. Mm-hmm. Somehow I've missed that. I focused just on the details of me, you know, am I critical? And, you know, I focus on the negative and trying to look at, focus on the strengths, the growth areas. And certainly as I look back on, you know, the underdeveloped one, the averaged one, and then the improved one, there's been tons of growth and progress, which is delightful. But this is new, this idea that, wow, part of my oneness comes out of a lost childhood.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the program. It's another episode. Well, in June of 2018, my bride, Julianne Cusick, sat down with Ian, and on the Enneagram, she is a 1. We are side by side one another. The 1 is known as the perfectionist or the reformer, and just like there's unique and complex issues with being a 2 or any of the numbers on the Enneagram, the 1 is particularly fascinating because I'm married to her, but it's really beautiful because in this conversation, as Ian interviews Julianne, she makes reference to our relationship and some of the ups and downs, and actually makes reference to what it's like to be a 1 married to a 2, or what it's like for me as a 2 married to her. It's a wonderful conversation. I learned a little bit about my wife by listening to it, so you'll learn about my wife as well as the Enneagram 1. So to learn more about Ian, you can go to iancron.com to learn about his programs and resources and training and where he's speaking next. You can also go to exploreyourtype.com. If you're new to the Enneagram or old, it's a free assessment and a free way to take a very brief test. I think there's 100 questions or so on there. And then you get a pretty solid report or solid sense of what your number is from there. And that's a really, really great start, along with his book, Road Back to You. And finally, as a resource with Ian's work, you can go to typologypodcast.com to explore the over couple hundred conversations and interviews there with thinkers, musicians, writers, authors, artists, creators, and so on. It's one of my favorite podcasts, not just because I have been on it, and not just because we are a advertiser on there where Restoring the Soul goes out to Ian's listeners, but because so much of the work that we do at Restoring the Soul is what I call Enneagram informed. It's a great way of developing self-awareness, but it's also a great way to grow emotionally and spiritually and really to become ourselves. So here we are on Restoring the Soul, listening to this episode that Ian entitled Finding Your Inner Encourager, where Julianne Cusick is being interviewed. Let's jump in.
Julianne Cusick, welcome to Typology, my friend.
Thank you, Ian. I am glad to be here with you today.
All right, how long have I known you?
Well, how old's your oldest? Because she was not even 2.
Okay, so she's 26.
Okay, so 24 years.
Oh my gosh.
Years. I know.
That's crazy.
It is.
Oh my gosh, that makes me 48.
Well, I was going to say it's half my life, but you're older than I am.
Thank you for that. We'll be sure to edit that out of the show. I am so glad to have an Enneagram 1 on the show today because it's been a little while, and I think you're the first woman Enneagram 1 we've had in a very long time. And I want to say, contrary to what most Enneagram 1s think, they're fantastic. You know, like I don't know what it is about Enneagram 1s, but I of all the numbers on the Enneagram, they are the most resistant to learning that that's their type. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, they're like, I don't want to be a 1. And I want to know why 1s don't want to be 1s.
Well, Ian, that's a good question. I think that, well, let me just say when 1s are in their good place, there's no better number than being a 1.
Oh, hold on, people. Did y'all hear that? There's no number better than being a 1. Okay, keep going. I love it.
Yeah, so true to being a 1. However, in our weaknesses, our inadequacies, our issues, there's nothing worse than being a 1.
Really?
Yes, because we are tormented by the inner critic.
Oh.
Yes.
All right. Well, okay. So everybody has an inner critic, right? I mean, every type has its own version, but what?
Yeah, but nobody has one like a one.
Is it more of a choir than a voice? What is it?
Well, choir, they don't sing though, but there is a panel of
There's
them.
a panel. Good.
And they are incessant at times.
Really? How old were you when you first recognized there's someone else living in my head, and it's not always a nice person living in my head?
It was probably when I wasn't living with my mother anymore, and yet I could still hear her in my head.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow. Can you tease that out for me a little bit? Like what was the realization? What was the voice like?
Oh, it was very harsh, very critical, very condemning. The woulda, shoulda, coulda.
Right.
Yeah, it was very much, the phrase inner critic is just so spot on. Very much a critic.
So how do you adjust the volume on it? Like how do you begin to speak back to the voices in a way that might release you from some of the tyranny of it?
I actually remember the first time that I kind of fought back to the inner critic. I know where I was, which house we were living in, which room I was in, and I literally spoke out loud, shut the expletive up.
Well, what were you, okay, hold on a second. I want to know this. I want to get the full picture. What were you doing when it happened, and like what brought that up for you?
Well, I was doing laundry. It wasn't anything, significant. It was just the inside voice critiquing me about whatever it was. Could have been one thing that I've thought of that's been a constant inner critic has been body image. And my mother was very critical of me as a young girl, as an adolescent, into my adulthood. And so that has been internalized. So it could have been anything. But I just remember being in front of the washer and dryer, just doing the mundane of new momhood, which entails a lot of laundry, by the way. And it was just this relentless, harsh, critical inner voice, like attacking me, ripping me to shreds about who I am. Who I was at the time. And I'd had enough. I was tired of listening and getting beaten up by this voice. And so that's when I actively started to fight back.
Okay, so I want to know, have you seen the movie Mr. Rogers yet?
No.
Oh.
I haven't.
Okay. All right.
Is that a must-see?
Oh, Enneagram Ones around the world, listen to me. You have to see Mr. Rogers. You have to. So I also, right after seeing it, someone texted out that I was with them. And so I got a bunch of like things on Instagram and Twitter asking me what number I thought Mr. Rogers was. Now, of course, again, doing this from a distance, speculating, about someone who's gone, but as I watched the film, I walked away thinking he's one of a couple of types, but I would bet he was an Enneagram 1. And I'm always trying to tell people, ones, I could go through a long list of the most incredible human beings that were ones. And now I can add to that list Mr. Rogers. That's my guess.
Well, I haven't seen it, but I will check it out. I will say, though, in my my dutiful preparation for our show today.
Yeah, okay, so I do want to say that this morning at precisely 10 a.m., we received a text from you saying, "I'm here." And I said, we've never had anyone on our show text us at exactly at the hour that we were going to begin and tell us, "I'm here."
I was just confirming my presence. But back to Mr. Rogers, I will say I came across a list recently, and my beloved Mary Poppins was listed as a 1.
Oh.
And that if I could model my motherhood after someone, it would be Mary Poppins.
Well, I hope that was an affirmation. Sounds like it was.
Yeah, it was. It really was. I think she's great.
So the Enneagram type 1s are called the perfectionists. I've sort of appropriated the word the improvers because I think that's a better, modifier for that type. And I think about you and your life history and the many ways that you have walked into situations that required improving. And you really, took things to a new level. And what do you think the central area of concern is for the 1? Like, where does the 1's attention constantly migrate toward on any given moment?
Improvement.
Okay. So what does that look like for you?
Let's see. Boy, you talked about vulnerability. Improvement for me, 1 is an area of personal growth, self-growth. I'm a lifelong learner, and I think many 1s are. They're into improving themselves, self-knowledge, self-growth, becoming better. It can be very critical. Thankfully, I've had about 15 years of battling that, close to 20 years of battling that inner critic. So she's quieter now. There's usually not a panel. Mm-hmm. I've reduced the number of inner critics. But I think as an improver, whatever they see, they tend to see what's missing and what can be done better.
Mm-hmm. You got an example?
Oh, do I? So I can walk into my house after being gone hours and within 30 seconds know what's out of place, what hasn't been done, and what needs to be done again, like it wasn't done well enough. Example, crumbs or smudges on the kitchen counter. It's absolutely annoying to my family. And my husband has asked me, and I'm really working on this, Ian, Michael has asked, don't say anything for 30 minutes.
Really?
When you walk in the door. Because I can walk in and I'll be like, how come this isn't done? And why is that out? And who left smudges on the kitchen cabinet? And who, like I can see the remains of the maple syrup and who made pancakes and didn't wipe the counter. Like it's ridiculous.
It's interesting. I've been, doing some work with Helen Palmer's group and this whole idea of where attention migrates naturally for each type, fascinates me. So, as you know, Annie's a 9, I'm a 4. But 4s often think and behave like 1s, like a lot of times, in fact, 4s and 1s misidentify with each other. Mm-hmm. And so she has this habit of opening the mail and then leaving it on the dining room table. I mean, like the envelopes that are torn open are still there. Like there's junk mail that's, splattered around. And I realized one day it's when she walks into the dining room, it's actually invisible to her. Like it is as if it's not there. Her attention isn't even registering that there's paper, like confetti all over the table. Mm-hmm. My mind, the moment I walk in, I go, ugh. It's the first thing I see when I walk into the room. Mm-hmm. So I just think it's so important for people to realize where their attention goes because if you don't know where it goes, then you'll habitually fall into the same thing and not, see all the other wonderful things that are happening in the same space or with the same person.
Right. Like what they did do and how much fun they had making pancakes and that they chose to do something relational over wiping the counter, or they did wipe the counter and to them it's clean.
Right.
And it may not be my clean, but it's clean.
Okay.
So putting relationship over perfection.
Ooh, I love that. When you said that, I was thinking putting relationship over being right.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You can be right or you can be married.
That is one of the best things I've heard all week. You can be right or you can be married. Oh, this was worth the whole price of admission. Okay, how did you arrive at the you can be right or you can be married wisdom line?
Oh, that was 20 years in the making. Truly a long, long time ago. I was privileged to walk with someone in a very difficult time in their life. And I think they are a one. And it was so important for them to be right. And yet it was destroying their marriage. And so that was a little jewel that came out of that difficult time, is you can be right or you can be married. And it served me well in my own marriage. It's not about being right. I also have coined the phrase done is better than perfect, because that drive for perfection, if I'm going to do something, it has to be done well. So if I can't do it perfect, I'm not going to do it at all. That in my younger years kept me pretty frozen. And so done is better than perfect. Anything worth doing is worth doing poorly. Let's just do it. Let's experience it versus being crippled by fear of perfection or fear of failure.
So, a lot of times ones will say to me, I really want to believe that my way isn't the only way, but it's so hard for me to believe that's not true.
Oh, absolutely. Because 9 times out of 10, Ian, ones are right.
Wow. Well, at least you're giving yourself a 10% margin of error there. I think that's What about the time? Do you remember the time you told me the story about the toilet paper in the bathroom? I have never forgotten this for my entire life.
Oh, dear Lord, what have I told you previously?
About the toilet rolls when you go into people's bathrooms and they don't actually...
Oh, whether they're under or over?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. Yes. So, so being a one, and let's place this a good 15 years in the past, I have grown, but I used to think the only way to do it was to have it come over.
Uh-huh.
I was at a friend's house at the time, and her role was pulling under. And I thought, oh, she must have made a mistake. And so I fixed the toilet paper roll.
Okay, but what I want to know is, did you fold it so there was a little triangle at the end, like when you go to a hotel?
Have you been in my house?
Yes, I have.
Were you there last week when we had company and I did that very thing?
Did you really? I'm always just happy if we have toilet paper in there when people come over. Usually they have to come out, it's like, do you have any toilet paper? It's like, well, okay, there you go. There's a 4 and a 9 living together.
Oh, yeah. Well, we have toilet paper. There's a 1 in the house.
Wow. All right. So what is it that people most value about ones? Like when a relationship, what in your experience do people most value about ones?
We are loyal. We have integrity. I think we can go the long haul in difficult times and difficult relationships, difficult seasons. You haven't scared me off in over 20 years.
Well, I've tried. I'm working on it.
I'm sorry, but you're stuck with me.
Yeah, well, there's still
you
time.
And me are stuck.
There's still time for me to do this. I can do it. I'm working on it.
Yeah. But we have a lot of really good qualities. It was interesting as I was preparing, as a one would do to prepare. I will confess, last night I thought, damn it, Ian, why didn't you send me a list of questions so I could more fully prepare for this interview? Because what's going to happen is I'm going to replay this interview over and over and over and over. And I'm going to say, oh, I could have said this better. Or, oh, I wish I had said that. That would have sounded or been so much better as an answer than what I gave. And so I know that going into this. And so I have to just give myself some grace, give myself some downtime, let it play for a little while, and then say, okay, I did what I did. It's good enough, right? Done is better than perfect. And if it totally sucks, he can re-record the whole interview.
Right. Well, I can.
Or just throw the whole thing out.
I can do that too. Well, now, Julianne, hold on. I got a bunch of other questions for you, but I actually need to, ironically, say a little bit about our show sponsor, which happens to be your husband's organization, Restoring the Soul. Right? So, I'm a psychotherapist, I'm a spiritual director, and I'm always encouraging people to seek out professional counseling and get some therapy. But one of the lessons I've learned is that not everybody benefits from a traditional 50-minute hour or even from the typical weekly sessions. And this is why I think some people, even though they may have a great counselor, can go to therapy or personal counseling for months or even years and really never get anywhere or make, meaningful progress. And this is why, and you know this, Julianne, that I'm such a fan and a believer in the intensive counseling process at Restoring the Soul, in, your town and in Colorado. Restoring the Soul was created by, my longtime friend, your husband, Michael Cusick, to help couples or individuals experience really deep change in half-day blocks over 1 or 2 weeks. Michael and his team, they know that sometimes you can't wait months or years to get to the bottom of an issue or to experience a breakthrough. So they've helped couples and individuals transform their relationships and their lives for a couple of decades now. So typology folks, if you're looking to get out of the rut you're in, but you can't wait months or years, you got to call Restoring the Soul today for a free consultation. You can just call 303-932-9777. 303-932-9777 and learn how their intensive counseling process can jumpstart your journey or launch you to a whole new place in your life. And as a special bonus, just for Typology listeners, make sure to visit www.restoringthesoul.com/typology. www.restoringthesoul.com/typology to download their PDF called 5 Ways Unaddressed Trauma May Be Derailing Your Relationship. How was that, Julianne? Was that a pretty good pump for the Restoring the Soul miracle workers?
I wouldn't call us miracle workers, but thank you, Ian. You're very gracious. Well, we love what we do here. It's awesome to see people's lives transformed and changed. And being an improver, it's a great environment because I continue to grow personally and professionally, and I get to come alongside people and help them through sometimes the deepest, darkest time in their life and see them grow and improve and come out of that. So it's very fulfilling work.
So let's stay on that theme for a second. You're a mom. You got 2 wonderful kids, and of course, parenting is a journey in itself. It's an education. It's a graduate school of its own.
Yes, it is.
Can you tell me about what motherhood or parenthood is like as a one? What's your journey been like as a mother and an improver on the Enneagram?
Well, 2 thoughts come to mind. One is when we were first introduced to the Enneagram a number of years ago through you in a conference that you were doing. And my husband and I, we were able to identify not just our own numbers, but our children's numbers. And that has been, I don't know how many years ago that was now, but that has stayed with us. Our kids know their numbers. Our kids know our numbers. They can say to me, Mom, you're being a 1 again. And so it has really helped us dial into who they are, what their personality is, what their strengths and weaknesses are, where they go in stress, where they go in relaxation, where we go. It's interesting, as a 1, my 2 children are related to 1. So I have a daughter who's a 4 and a son who's a 7. And of course, the 4s, the 4s go to 1 in
health.
In health, and the 7s go to the 1 in stress, right? So as much as they tease me about my oneness, I can tease them right back and say, hey, this is growth for you, or this is where you go when you're stressed. When you start doing your laundry and cleaning your room and you need to order, this is you being a one. But it's really been helpful. It's been really helpful in our marriage. When I reorganized the dishwasher to get more in, my husband doesn't take that as a personal assault that he's somehow not needed as a two, right? That he's come to appreciate I can just get more in the dishwasher. So it's helped some of those little things that can tend to annoy, whether it's this partner situation or parent-child, because when I go in to check a room, if it's clean, my natural tendency is a one to say, okay, I see 1, 2, 3, 4 things that still need to be done. And sometimes I can forget to start with, wow, great job. You've done a number of things in here. This is terrific. In order to get this check off your list that you're done, I can see 3 things that need to still be worked on. Can you find them? And so it just changes the energy. Yeah. Right. If I can be a little bit more careful.
Yep. Yeah. It's, I was out with a friend last night. His name is, David. He's a sobriety coach, and we were sitting on my porch and, talking, and he brought up sort of an illustration for a little bit of what you're talking about that made me just laugh my head off. He said, it's like, in your type, it's like you're standing in the batter's box in a batting cage. You know what I'm saying? And the ball machine is just throwing balls at you constantly. Like every 3 seconds, a ball comes flying out and you just swing at it like reactively. You're just like, oh gosh. And every single time you're trying to hit it out of the park, And he says, so oftentimes in life, that's what I feel like. I feel like all these experiences and people are, being thrown at me at 90 miles an hour. And I just keep swinging in reactivity. It's like, whoop, here comes the ball. I swing. And he said, and what I've learned from the Enneagram is how to step out of the batter's box and make the pitcher wait.
Yes. Yes.
So I can just breathe and say, okay, now what do I want to do right now? Do I want to just live in reactivity and, in the craziness of my type? Or do I want to learn how to step out of the box, observe what's happening in the moment, and choose whether or not that's a good pitch to hit? Or to take a swing at.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Slowing things down. Absolutely. And being able to, do all of those things, right? Take a deep breath, count to 10, count to 5. Just to have a perspective. And I think as I've matured and seasoned and done my own work, my edges are softer than they used to be 20 years ago. So what's more important here, the kid's heart or the room? Well, clearly the kid's heart.
Right.
Right.
What? Yeah. But when you're in reactivity, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but this is true for every type. When you're in reactivity, when you're living unconsciously, right? Just off,
right.
Right. You may fundamentally believe that's true, but when you're unconscious and in automatic mode, you don't actually live as though it's true, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I would think that's true for any number, but certainly true for a 1, because at least my mind is so quick to assess, what's missing. And that's a sad thing, to always see kind of what's missing or what needs to be fixed. We lived in our house for 10 years, I think, with the most atrocious kitchen. I think I needed to go on antidepressants just to manage living in the house with this atrocious kitchen, because all I could do was see what was wrong. I don't think we'd been in the house 2 weeks and I had started to paint the walls because the paint had clashed with the cabinet color. And I felt like, I was nauseous every morning I walked in. So, there's some sad things, about being a 1 and seeing the negativity, but we can also see the potential, right? We can also see the growth. It's been fun and been so enjoyable to finally, after 10 years, have redone our kitchen a few years ago, and it's delightful. And it was built for a relationship. and it's where everybody hangs out.
That's a really important distinction, and I think a real sign of health is that you just said, it was built for relationship, not to be, let's say, right or correct. It was built as a space for people's hearts to meet one another.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that happens, and that's a beautiful thing. My dad and mom, they're first generation Americans and Portuguese and Italian heritage. And the kitchen was really the heart of the home, right? The cooking and the eating and the fellowship and the fighting that went along with it. It all happened in the kitchen. And so I really wanted that to have functionality for people to gather. So we have a bit of a breakfast bar that's really a breakfast, lunch, and dinner and snack bar now. And people just hang out there.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. So a lot of times ones, you sort of pointed to this a few minutes ago, or they have trouble getting started on things because they're afraid that they won't do them correctly, right? So there can be a lot of procrastination for ones because there's some hesitancy and fear around competency and getting it just right. What is there anything you have always felt called toward but have feared to do because you might not do it right?
I think of a couple things. One, back when I was probably in my early 40s, I was afraid to do like a sprint triathlon. Mm-hmm. And because I didn't think I could do it. Mm-hmm. And my good inner voice, I think I'd like to say I now have an inner encourager.
Ooh, that's good. An inner encourager.
Yeah, my inner encourager said, you're too old to be afraid of something. Like, go do it. And so I did. I doubt I'll ever do it again. I had a back injury a few years ago. And talk about needing to rest and be still. It's a good thing that God has had me on the journey of learning that, because when I had this injury, I had a nerve flare up. And anytime there's a nerve that's flared, you can't fix it by doing things. Mm-hmm. And that's a one's go-to, is you fix it by doing things. I had to fix this by being still.
Oh, that is so hard for a one because you see so much that's wrong or mistakes in the environment. It's like you have a never-ending to-do list of things that need doing, and so in fact I've never seen people like ones who really, there's never enough time to stop and have fun. There's never enough time to stop and just relax and, sit on the porch and have an iced tea and watch the trees and the wind, because there's just too much to do. It's like was it Alice in Wonderland? Who was it was running around all the time with the clock? It's that sort of a thing. I mean, is that something you're finding relief from in your life?
It's certainly an area that I have to be attuned to. So even as a child, after school, I was made to do homework before I could go out to play. I think I had a very unhealthy one as a mom. And then by the time my homework was done, it was dark and I couldn't play. And yet duty and responsibility over fun has been ingrained in me. And so I very much have to get my work done, in order to earn a break. I don't just get a break because, you deserve a break today. But I have to earn it.
Right.
So I have to watch that. Getting away for vacation is incredibly difficult because of duty and responsibility. So I try to do mini vacations, like if I've got schoolwork, I'm finishing up my graduate degree in marriage and family therapy. And so I'll kind of allow myself in the beautiful Colorado to sit outside and work on my laptop. Like if I've got to do school and I have work to do, let's at least do it in a beautiful place or have a nice drink to go with it, something iced, no caffeine.
Be very careful. No sugar.
No sugar. Right. No sugar. No. treating myself. Like if I'm going to do something I don't really enjoy doing, then there's, building in rewards, building in treats, because it doesn't come naturally to get to have downtime. So little mini vacations.
So I'm going to circle back and press into you on something. All right. Just a moment ago when you were talking about growing up and that it would be dark before you could go out to play, so you missed the opportunity. I could just see in your eyes, because we're on Skype, I could see in your face and in your eyes, and because I've known you so long, that just for a moment you hit something inside that was very tender. Can you? What did you hit?
Oh, I think sadness, loss, grief. Michael sent me something recently that Richard Rohr had written, and of course he's a one, and he had talked about ones as childlike and full of joy and wonder at the world and creation, and that's true. But for some of us, that's been lost. And so what does it mean to regain that in our lives, to reclaim what was lost? He also wrote that many ones have a lot of childhood loss and grow up with at least one critical parent. And, that was new for me, Ian. I didn't realize the connection between the lost childhood and being a one. Somehow I've missed that. I focused just on the details of me, am I critical? I focus on the negative and, trying to look at, focus on the strengths, the growth areas. And certainly as I look back on, the underdeveloped one, the averaged one, and then the, improved one, there's been tons of growth and progress, which is delightful. But this is new, this idea that, wow, part of my oneness comes out of a lost childhood. There's a lot of grief there. There's a lot of sadness. I think it helps me look back and see why I spent so much time with my kids in nature when they were little. Our son's an outdoor recreational leadership guy, and he talks about how I love that, I grew up in a home where I didn't have TV for the first 2 years of my life, that I was outside. And that was intentional on my part because I didn't get that, right? I didn't get to play. I didn't get to be outside when it was daylight. Duty came first.
Right.
Chores, homework, responsibilities always came first.
Yeah. Well, it's like what James Hollis said, right? Everybody's a recovering child.
Yeah.
Right. And that's I'm not trying to, sort of paint life in a glum sort of way, but, we do have to accept that we operate in the world with bumps and bruises and limps and loss, and, we have to find our way in the middle of it toward a more hopeful future.
Absolutely.
So, you've come so far. I mean, I've known you for, as you said, 24, 25 years, and we've just watched each other grow and in tremendous ways for which I'm very, very grateful. What do you do? How are you using the Enneagram to continue your journey of growth? Like, what is it that you like? Do you refer to it often? Do you think about it often? I mean, like, what role does it play?
Oh, I think it's a part of our everyday life. My son just the other day, out of the blue, I think we were saying Mom's going to talk to Ian about the Enneagram, and he was just like, "I'm a 7." He just owns it. And I know you're 8 and is a 7, so we have that in common. It's really a part of our everyday life in the counseling and soul care work that I'm privileged to do. It's a part of my work.
Yeah.
So many times I'll recommend your book.
Continue.
I'll say if you're new to the Enneagram, the book to start with is The Road Back to You by good friend Ian Cron. And it's great. People, I have them listen to your podcast. I have them read your book. I have them, take your little Enneagram quiz to find their number. So because self-knowledge and self-awareness, regardless of our number, that's where we start. That's where growth starts, is self-awareness and self-knowledge. So I use it with my clients. It's great to see them kind of catch on. I love the head, the heart, the gut center, being able to identify and operate out of that. So it's a part of who I am and who I'm becoming. Once I finish graduate school, I'd like to immerse myself more deeply. Denver was privileged to have Christopher Hewart's come out last fall. That was a highlight. I got to go to a one-day workshop. He wrote The Sacred Enneagram. That was good for me. Of the three kind of spiritual aspects of silence, solitude, and stillness, as a one, I can do silence all day long. I can do solitude all day long. But you ask a one to be still? Whew, is that a challenge? So where can I intentionally build stillness into my life? As a spiritual discipline, if you will, as a growth opportunity. Certainly when my back went out 3 years ago and I was face down on the floor for weeks on end, I was grateful God had begun to teach me stillness because I needed to be able to rest, to be able to heal. Excuse me.
So I'm a one. I'm in your office. I'm, not far into the journey of, learning about who I am. And you've been tasked, in this particular session with giving me 3 or 4 things a one should do or could do in order to grow, into a more healthy expression of themselves. What would you tell me?
I would ask you what you do for fun. And I'd ask you what you do for relaxation. I have told people before to, as a homework assignment, they need to find a guilty pleasure.
Ooh, okay, what's your guilty pleasure?
For me?
Yeah.
Certain shows on Netflix.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Can I have one just in case I haven't seen it?
Actually, my latest secret, and I have forbade my husband to watch it because it just needs to be like my sacred space, is Offspring.
Oh, I haven't even seen it yet.
Yeah, it's an Australian show. I've really enjoyed it. And I also love Life in, I think it's called Life in Pieces. Yeah. That's the shorts, the family of shorts. But they have Life in Pieces. It makes me laugh, and that says something, being a one.
All right. So what else? Okay. So I'm still in your office. I'm trying to figure out, man, how do I get to be a healthy one? What else would you tell me to do or think about?
I would have you set a timer and get your butt in a chair and be still. And I would start at 5 minutes. And that is really tough for someone.
Now, are you describing meditation, or what are you describing?
I'm saying you have to just be physically still to start. And then, yes, going into contemplation, meditation, that quiet space, working up to 20 minutes. I cannot tell you how difficult that is for a one, myself included, but it's the benefits, they're worth it. It's really good to be still. So creating stillness. And for beginners, sometimes they have to write their to-do list, right? So having contemplative time, the mind of a one keeps going. So you have your Bible or your journal on one side, keep the to-do list on the other side, just so you can write it down and get it out of your brain. Because if not, the one will continue to go, oh, I can't forget this. I can't forget this. So I find I have to just write it down, then I know I'm not going to forget it. And then I can go on in stillness and quiet and contemplation.
Oh, that's good. So I also have a friend of mine who's a one, and they actually keep a list of, they have wonder lists, in their phone. It's like a to-do.
Oh, yeah.
You got Wunderlist?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So they have a whole little file in Wunderlist that is just a list of pleasurable activities or things that they want to do. Like they live in Washington, they live in Seattle, and they're like, okay, fun things to do in Seattle that I want to get to one of these days. Maybe it's a museum or it's a park but they just keep a list. Cause sometimes you're sitting around going, okay, I got free time. What am I going to do? And you forget, oh my gosh, there's this museum or there's a zoo or there's this or there's that. And it's like, you got to keep a list of the fun things you want to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because ones in their relaxation, right, where they go to 7. So, I mean, I can be a lot of fun.
Oh, I've seen it.
Yeah.
It usually involves 2 margaritas, but that's okay. I've seen it.
Hey, nowadays, just a half a margarita will do it. Some of the funnest things, my son and I recently went to yoga on the rocks at Red Rocks, and we had a blast. It was so good. It was so good to go. Going to a concert, going to a movie, just having some fun to just let go is just giving one's permission to have fun, right?
Yes. Okay. So I did something the other day that I just realized would probably be really fun for a one, really good for a one. All right. So Anthony and I have been listening to this new Betty LaVette record. What's the name of the record again, man? Change's Gonna Come. What is it?
Keep going.
Oh my gosh. Listen, y'all, if you've not heard Betty LaVette's new record, her name is spelled Bettyel. Is it L-E or L-A?
Tyelave.
Yeah, Lavette.
Things have changed.
And the name of the record is Things Have Changed. And if you are into some bad grooves, I'm talking to some of the baddest grooves I've heard in a long time, this record is amazing. Well, anyway, I put it on, I had it on the house. Nobody else is home but me. And Julianne, I just started dancing. And I don't I don't mean just like clicking my fingers and tapping my toes. It's like, no. Nobody else was there. And I'm like grooving, like I've drunk half a keg of beer and I'm at my daughter-in-law's wedding. I'm just like it wouldn't be my daughter-in-law's wedding. That'd be my son's wedding. Anyhow. But I mean, like I'm at a wedding party and I'm like dancing around the house and like to the point that I'm embarrassing myself. Like when you do stuff and no one else is there and you're feeling embarrassed for yourself. And
Absolutely.
I'm like, that's a one thing to do, because if I feel embarrassed, a one would feel really embarrassed probably of letting their bodies go and letting all those instinctual animal drives come up and sort of dance around the house. Is that probably a good thing for a one?
It is, and I think that you may be surprised that there is a lot of pleasure in letting go like that for a one, because they're moving towards their 7, right? They're tired of the heavy feelings. They don't want to deal with the heavy feelings. They want to have fun. And so there's a lot of relief in that, but many times they need permission. And so I can't think of the name of the movie, but the image is with me. I think it was Tom Cruise in his underwear dancing in socks.
Oh yeah, that was his first big movie.
Yeah. So, but that's what that comes to mind when you talk about you dancing in your house.
That's exactly what I was doing.
Being in your underwear.
No, you don't understand. Like with tube socks on.
Yeah.
I'm dancing around, but I don't have tighty whities, but I was dancing around, the house to Betty LaVette, and the whole time almost watching myself as an out of body experience going, what are you doing? This is madness. I'm like, yes, it is madness. And I just, lost my mind for literally for like 5 minutes, in the house. I think that's good for every type, but for ones who tend to tamp down instinctual drives and animal energies, I think it's like such a good thing to do. To let off that steam.
And it's part of one of the fun things we do at our house. Mom has been known to crank the tunes and dance in the kitchen, just randomly when I need to get some new energy, get rid of the toxic energy. It's been something we've been known to do as a family as we're cleaning up the dinner dishes, is just put on some tunes and dance. And it's wonderful. It changes the whole energy in me. It changes the energy in our house. I highly recommend it. And if you can do it in your underwear, even better.
And on that note, we're going to end our show today, traumatizing all of our listeners with their imagining me in my underwear and tube socks dancing to the strains of Betty Levette's newest record. Julianne, it's been amazing having you on.
Well, Ian, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I do confess my first thought was, you must be desperate.
Oh my gosh, that's so one of you.
Yeah. And then I told my husband, I said, no, I'm not doing it. He said, why not? I said, because I'm not good enough. So very much you activated that one in me. And it's been a good opportunity for me to manage that inner critic and just kind of hang out with you today as your lifelong friend. Love your wife and your kids. Love you, and just hang out and hope your listeners can get something good out of this time today.
So thank you for listening to another episode of Restoring the Soul. We want you to know that Restoring the Soul is so much more than a podcast. What we're all about is helping couples and individuals get unstuck. You know how some people go to counseling or marriage therapy for months or even years and never really get anywhere? Our intensive programs help clients get unstuck in as little as 2 weeks. To learn more, visit restoringthesoul.com. That's restoringthesoul.com.